Today is the release of Scarlet and Violet, and we're gonna do a tier list. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG. That intro is so bad, but I'm not redoing it because alright, just very, very quickly, I spent an enormous amount of time editing a video, and it was taking to the point where I was actually getting really angry. So however today's video looks is what it's gonna be. We're not doing a thing today. So if you haven't already, as if I'm subscribing the channel to you, but go. It's there. Like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Tells YouTube this is a good channel. Other people should watch it. Scarlet and Violet released today at the time of recording, and the day this video goes up. And Scarlet and Violet cards will be legal at tournaments in 2 weeks' time, April 14th, which is the day rotation happens. Let's head over to Tier Maker and do this tier list. All right, tier list time. I do want to just make a quick note that these are the tiers. This is what I think would be the best deck in the format. These are all very, very good decks. These are good decks that if you took to a tournament, you have a chance of doing well. These are decks that, while they're good decks, they are maybe like matchup dependent or meta dependent decks that I think have interesting or niche strategies or that just aren't played enough for me to really have a good opinion about. And then bad is just decks that I don't like. I'm not going to look at all these decks. Some of these decks just aren't good enough to really rate. Some of these decks just don't really exist anymore, like Ice Rider Calyrex. I guess you could be like, oh, Ice Rider Beaverell, but it's not very good. So I'm just going to stick to some of the main decks and maybe throw a few others in there. And we are going to start with Single Strike Urshifu that I definitely think is bad. Single Strike Urshifu Houndoom is bad. It's just too slow. You damage yourself. It has a really bad weakness. And without Lugia, powering up that Gmax one blow multiple times in a game, it's just really, really difficult and not worth bothering trying to do. I think Gardevoir goes into tier 1.5. I've seen a lot of people talking about it being surprisingly mid, putting it into tier 2. I think as the format progresses and we really start to understand the deck better and build it a little bit differently, I think we'll see it start to have a little bit more success. I don't think it's as bad as some are saying. Some people are just like, oh, Gardevoir's bad. I don't think so. I think it's pretty good. I think you could take it to a tournament and have some reasonable success. Let's go ahead. We're going to skip things like Gengar's bad. Arceus Gengar's bad. Who cares about the single prize? Annihilate, I don't think it's very good. Arcanine EX is bad, and that's from Justin Basil. Those are his words. He tested it. He absolutely despised it. I think the Koraidon Great Tusk is pretty rogue. Can it do well? Yeah, I think it can kind of do well, but man, that Dino Cry ability hurts so much. Being able to accelerate energies is great, but ending your turn is you have to get energies into the discard and then put them onto a Pokemon you want to put them on. But then your turn ends, so you don't even get to attack, which means if you load up energies onto a Pokemon, there's a good chance that it's going to get boss KO'd or bossed, and now you don't have as long with it because it's already getting pressured and damage is being put onto it. So not really a big fan of it, but I do think that there's some utility to it. So Banette is going into tier 2. I think the item lock is good. I don't know if it's good enough with the damage output that you're getting, which is kind of what's holding this deck back. Plus, it's the stage 1, which we've had stage 1 item lock cards in the past. However, Pokemon HP as a whole were a lot lower, so the damage hasn't changed, but the Pokemon HP has increased. It's kind of like housing, right? Everyone's salary is staying roughly the same, but those prices just keep going up. That took a sad turn. I actually am going to rate this Lunatone. I'm going to rate it as a pretty decent rogue deck. It did well at a tournament recently. It's able to compete with some of the other single prize Lost Zone decks and things like that. You have potentially pretty good damage output, but the loss of things like Quick Ball to not only find your Pokemon, but put energies into the discard so you can accelerate them with Zoroark is gone, so it's a little harder to use. But I still think it could be a fun, interesting deck. Why don't we go for something that is pretty good? We got this Lugia single strike deck. I think it's tier 1.5. We lose a lot of the utility and flexibility of Lugia being able to go, oh, I want to play with Radiant Charizard this week. Okay, cool, I can. I want to use Raikou. I want to use Yveltal. I want to use Stoutland. Like, you have so many different paths and plans. You can attack with a bunch of single prize Pokemon with Raikou, Charizard, 2 Archeops. Like, you have so many Yveltal. That's 5 single prize Pokemon. And you can hit with Lumineon and then run back into the deck thanks to something like Aurora Energy. We just lose all of that. The ability for Lugia to put out a ton of damage with powerful colors, energies, and choice belts, gone. Capture energy to increase consistency, gone. Quick ball to maintain some level of consistency, gone. Lugia loses a ton, but it does gain single strike engine, which for me personally is incredible. And I absolutely love this deck, though. Yes, it is going to be a little bit more inconsistent, unfortunately, so that's kind of why it falls to the bottom of tier 1.5. But you can, again, tier 1.5, you can take this to a tournament and do well. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. Palkia Ice Rider, I think, is going to be a tier 2 deck. I think it's going to, Palkia hits pretty hard. Ice Rider adds another dimension of damage that you can hit pretty hard with once you use Star Portal to accelerate some energies onto things. You can just attach Melanie. You lose Training Court, you lose Capacious Bucket. I'm actually going to... You lose the Inteleon engine. You can run this with Bibarel. Maybe we'll put it Rogue. You can run it with Bibarel, but losing Quick Ball, losing Capacious Bucket, those things hurt a ton for this deck. So, maybe I'm wrong about Palkia. I've seen some discussion of Palkia kind of rising up a little bit, but I just need to be convinced, I think. We'll talk about the Arceus decks. I think Arceus Giratina and Arceus Regidrago, and we'll even do the Arceus Goodra. I think they're all roughly tier 2 decks. I think they all, there's a chance you could do well at a tournament with them. I think they are a little bit meta dependent. They all suffer from similar issues. They're all dragon types, which is great because they have no weakness. However, a lot of times with these decks, you don't want to be giving up the extra prizes that Arceus VStar allows you to give up. Also, in each of these decks, you have competing V-Star powers. Now, in some of them, it's not as big of an issue, like in the Regidrago Arceus deck. It's not as big a deal because you can use Regidrago's V-Star power to get stuff out of the discard, or you can use Arceus's V-Star power to get stuff out of your deck. Either way, like if you discard the stuff you really needed, okay, Regidrago time. You got stuff still in the deck, okay, it's Arceus time. So they're not really as competing as opposed to having some fluidity, which is really nice. But in the Goodra Arceus version, you really have competing V-Star powers, and that is not good. The Giratina, it's not as big a deal because Giratina hits really, really hard, but if you are trying to one-shot something like a Gardevoir EX that has 310 health, you can't do it without a Defiant Band, which means you have to be down on prizes, and that kind of works a little bit because you might go down on prizes giving up two prize Vs and V-Stars, but you don't want to have to rely on that. Like, if you never want to rely on your opponent doing something good, right? Like that's just this never, or relying on your opponent to do anything really is not a great strategy. But I think Regidrago, I'm gonna put it actually above Giratina because Regidrago has the flexibility of attacking with the Giratina, the Goodra, and also has the Duraludon, which where's that? I think Duraludon also. So Regidrago can use the benefits of all the different dragon type Pokemon, but also still have the fluidity of using Starbirth or Legacy Star, which is actually kind of nice, and I'm a little bit excited for it. I just threw this Duraludon into tier 2. You're losing a ton of special energy in the form of Lugia. Yes, Lugia will still be a thing, but it's not going to be the 35% meta share that it is currently. So with that, Duraludon kind of takes a little bit of a hit, but it doesn't really lose too much. Yveltal is gone, so the big need for Big Power Soul, as far as Duraludon's concerned, really isn't that bad. Your biggest need for is now Lost Zone decks and Giratina decks, but that's kind of why it's in tier 2, just because it's going to be a little meta dependent, it's going to be matchup dependent, so you still have some pretty good matchups with Arceus Duraludon. It's just not going to be as good as it was. I've been seeing a lot of people talking a lot of hate for SableZard. I think it's still really good, and I think it was Joe from Omnipoke also said the same thing recently on Twitter, that SableZard is getting an unnecessary amount of hate. It's a pretty solid deck, and I expect it to do pretty well. The reason it's going into 1.5 or 1.5 right now is just because I'm unsure how it favors into other Lost Zone decks, just at this exact moment. I think there's definitely potential that it's a tier 1 deck for sure, but for now, we're going to be a little bit conservative in our rankings and kind of rank things a little bit lower than maybe they should be. An actual tier 1 deck is going to be the Zamazenta Comfy deck. It just hits really hard, so it's going to be able to one-shot basic Pokemon EXs, basic Pokemon Vs. Your opponent hits with the Raikou, you come back, and now you can KO it immediately with Revenge or Revenge Blast, whatever the attack is on the Zamazenta. Hits for 220 after something was KO'd on your opponent's last turn. Really cool. And while we're at it, we're just going to throw in Giratina to be a tier 1 deck as well. I'm gonna call Goodra. I'm gonna call Goodra tier 1.5. The reason I'm putting it into 1.5 is because I don't think it competes super well with the Giratina, and even to a degree the Charizard, because Radiant Charizard hits really hard, and Escape Rope is a thing, Escape Rope Boss is a thing, Escape Rope Serena is a thing, and you don't have the big Power Soul to protect your Goodra from. It gets hit really hard with Charizard, and then Sableye comes in. You're not protected from Giratina Star Requiem without big Power Soul, so I don't think it's the strongest of them, although it is pretty good. It's just relative to these Lost Zone decks, I think it might be one of the weaker ones. Spidops and this Leafeon, I played against it, and it didn't do great, and the only reason I didn't do any better is because I played a garbage deck myself, and that was Koraidon. It was not a good time, but increasing the retreat cost of all your opponent's active Pokemon, or your opponent's active Pokemon, is really nice. Leafeon hits more damage for the number of, that's bad English. Leafeon does more damage the higher your opponent's active retreat cost is. So not only does it make it harder for your opponent's Pokemon to leave the active, but you're actually buffing the damage output of something like Leafeon, and something like Air Balloon's gone. So now we're not able to reduce the retreat cost as easily, so it's pretty cool. I think Magnezone kind of falls somewhere into Rogue. I think Zoroark actually kind of gets a lot better. Again, it's tier 2, it's going to be meta dependent. If there's a lot of fighting types, I think it gets a little weird, but the ability to just hit 300 damage, pretty cool. The Picnic Basket, I don't know if that's out yet. I don't know if it's in Scarlet and Violet or if it's in Paldea Evolved, but heal 50 damage from everything absolutely crushes this deck. So if people start playing it, Zoroark's going to fall off. But in the moment, if no one's playing it, it might actually not be a bad choice. I think Miraidon's definitely tier 1.5. Fast consistency between Flaffy Engine, between the electricity generators, the consistency of Tandem Unit itself. There's a lot of stuff going for Miraidon. So solid deck. It hits for good damage. You just got to find maybe like 1 or 2 better lightning type attackers that you can really make use of Tandem Unit and the Dynamotor on the Flaffy electricity generator. And I think once you have that, it's going to be a real force to be reckoned with. But again, makes things like fighting type Pokemon a little bit better because they're easy to one shot. The single strike Lugia decks can easily run Dunsparce if too many lightning type Pokemon enter the format, remove their lightning weakness. You can easily throw in a single price Stonejourner, which can just crush your deck. Right now, a lot of times they're being paired with the Regieleki. Regieleki increases the Vmax, increases damage of the basic Pokemon, so this can hit really, really hard. The Regieleki V takes 100 less damage, so it does 100 damage and it takes 100 less. Well, you could be hitting 160 with 2 Regieleki Vmaxes in play, hit 190 if you're attacking a V with a Choice Belt or something like that. So you can really make use of this deck, and I think it's pretty good. Zoro-box, I think, is always like a rogue deck. I don't think it really ever gets enough play or enough discussion to really know kind of where it falls, and it's really going to depend on what other stuff is being played. If there's a lot of Lost Zone stuff, it might not be that good, simply because trading single prize for single prize is probably going to favor the one that's more consistent. Lost Zones are very consistent. Ampharos is bad. It comes in like those V Battle deck type things, so I don't think it's very good. I don't really think there's anything else that's like super worth rating. Maybe you can get like a Flaafy-Box that's like a rogue decent pick. But other than that, I think everything else is going to fall in like, yeah, I don't think there's really anything else that I'm super dying to rate. I guess Mew is still really good. I still think Mew is like a tier 1 deck. I think it's just very, very good. I don't know if I'm going to put anything in S right now. I think, oh God, it's just a little too hard to say. If I had to pick one, it's going to be between these two, the Zamazenta and the Giratina. I'm gonna favor Giratina early on, just because I think a lot of people aren't going to necessarily know how to deal with something like Lost Impact taking out their big, stage 2 EX Pokemon or their, Vmax Pokemon that's, a third or half the game gone immediately. So this is, I think, where we'll end this rating. But let me know your thoughts on where these decks fall. Am I close to what you made? Was there a deck that I didn't rate that you have strong feelings for? I want to know. But that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you next time.